300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Glad to have you with me on a Wednesday morning. A great show for you today. A special guest coming on the show at 8:30 a.m. Yeshiva basketball star Ryan Turell will be joining me. He's been garnering interest from the NBA, trying to become the first Orthodox Jewish basketball player to play in the modern NBA. He will be joining me later on in the show. A lot of news in the NFL. The Falcons are apparently going to check out Justin Fields' second pro day later this afternoon. What does that mean that they're sending? What type of message are they sending to the rest of the NFL? Julian Edelman is retiring. How should we remember him? And in the NBA, Mark Cuban had some hypocritical comments. I'm going to tell you exactly what those were. But we start with the devastating news out of the state of Colorado. The Denver Nuggets, their star guard Jamal Murray, tore his ACL yesterday or 2 nights ago. Just a devastating crush in that loss to the Golden State Warriors. This is a huge blow, a devastating blow to the Denver Nuggets. And the real question is, how does this impact their title hopes? And to me, when you look at the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic is unquestionably their best player. But when you think about the Denver Nuggets and why they've been such a legitimate threat, it's not just because of Jokic. It's because we've looked at a guy in Jamal Murray and we've said this is not just a guy who plays like a borderline all-star throughout the regular season, but this is a guy who in the postseason elevates his level of play to superstar status. This is a guy who transforms himself from an above-average starter to an absolute elite all-team, all-NBA team guard in the NBA. So when I think about Jamal Murray, this is absolutely crushing because he is what made that 1-2 punch legitimate with Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. He is what fortifies that starting dynamic duo. That's how they match up against the Clippers. That's how they match up against the Jazz. And when you think about who the ultimate X factor was for that team, you know what you're going to get from Nikola Jokic. Mike Malone is a good coach. They've got savvy veterans. Michael Porter Jr. is still ascending. He's a young player. Jamal Murray was the guy to take them over the top. He was the reason why they beat the Jazz in that epic all-time 7-game first-round series last year in the bubble. Took them 7 games. Jamal Murray was offsetting all the heroics by Donovan Mitchell by pouring in heroics of his own. He dropped over 50 points, 2 games, 42 points in another game. This was when Donovan Mitchell was dropping 57, 51 points in games, 44 points in another. And Jamal Murray led their team in points, in assists. He was absolutely crucial and the sole reason why they won that series. And then you look at the next round against the Clippers, and he was the reason that they prevailed ultimately in Game 7. He dropped 40 points in Game 7 against the Clippers, 12 points in the fourth quarter. And sure, Nikola Jokic, again, was the best player. But when you looked at, okay, who is the guard on the Denver Nuggets that's going to offset what Paul George gave you, what Kawhi gave the Clippers? It was Jamal Murray. He was the ultimate mismatch. He controlled the tempo. He controlled the pace. He set guys up. And when I think about Jamal Murray, the guy that I think most about is actually Rajon Rondo, because to me, Jamal Murray is like a souped up version of Rajon Rondo. We think about Rondo in glowing terms, and yet he's averaged this year for the Atlanta Hawks 4 points, 2 rebounds before he got traded to the Clippers. Why? Because he's a winning player. In the postseason, he elevates his level of play, his status to an all-star level. Rajon Rondo, for his career, averaging 10 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 8 assists on 32% shooting. In the postseason for his career, those numbers spike up: 13 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. We saw last year in the bubble, he shot 40% from the three-point line for the Lakers last year, hit some big shots for LA down the stretch. In fact, during his time with the Boston Celtics in the 2011-2012 season, when he really took off, he averaged 12 points, 12 assists, and 5 rebounds during the regular season. In the postseason, those numbers spiked up: 17 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds. This is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, this regular season, 21 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists, or about 5 assists. And in the postseason last year, he's given you 26.5 points per game, 6.5 assists, 5 rebounds, 45% shooting from the three-point line, over 50% from the floor. That's what you expect now when we watch Jamal Murray. And that was just in 19 games. So he's having the same kind of Rajon Rondo effect in the postseason, which is he's no longer just an average starting point guard. He elevates to an all-star, to a superstar caliber player, which is how they've been able to attain so much success. And so in sports, we always talk about who are winning players. What players have winning intangibles? And when we think about the Denver Nuggets and the guy who most possesses those winning tangibles, the things you can't value, the things you can't measure and you can't quantify just by stats, but when you watch the impact he has on the game, that's Jamal Murray. The stats don't reflect the type of impact and his type of worth that he has on the Denver Nuggets. This is a guy who can single-handedly drop 50 points again in the postseason. That's what you need. That's the type of performance that is going to be required to knock off some of these teams. And then the other piece of it is what players make you contenders and what players make you relevant. There's a difference. There are a lot of really good players. Zach LaVine is one of my favorite players with the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls hadn't been relevant really until they traded for Nikola Vucevic. And even then, they're not necessarily relevant, but they are really talented players. Nikola Jokic is the face of the Denver Nuggets. We understand that. But the guy that makes them relevant, the guy that enhanced their view, the guy that added that mystique to their team was Jamal Murray. He's the guy, when he's playing at the all-star caliber player, that's what transforms the Denver Nuggets from just a regular pretender to a legitimate title contender. And then they made the trade for Aaron Gordon, and it looked like they were finally going to have the depth that was required, the depth that they were going to need to make a really good run. They were really well positioned, and this just couldn't have come at a worse time. And unfortunately for them, I don't see a situation now where without Jamal Murray, they're going to make the NBA Finals or even the Western Conference Finals. I just don't see it. I don't think they're better than the Clippers. I don't think they're better than the Lakers. They're not better than the Jazz, especially not now. They're probably not better than the Phoenix Suns. And honestly, the Portland Trail Blazers and the Dallas Mavericks may also be better. The only chance that they have is if Aaron Gordon, if Michael Porter Jr. and Will Barton all of a sudden start to step up and elevate the level of play, not only of themselves, but of their teammates, because that's what Jamal Murray was doing, was setting up his teammates. And now you're asking Will Barton to be a facilitator. You're asking Michael Porter Jr., who has the ultimate green light, who unfortunately up until this point in his career, I don't want to categorize him on a holistic level as a selfish player, but he is pretty self-centered when it comes to basketball. Every time he gets the ball, he's trying to shoot. He's not looking to assist. He's not looking to facilitate. Aaron Gordon is happy to be in a winning environment. He's just happy to have been pulled out of that firestorm in Orlando. So he'll be a team player, but that's what Jamal Murray was providing. That calm, that composure, running the offensive sets. And this is just a devastating blow. Again, I love Nikola Jokic. He's clearly the face of the franchise, but the guy that has taken them over the top has been Jamal Murray. And now we're not going to see him. And it's a shame for basketball. It's a shame because that's what made the Western Conference so intriguing, was the Nuggets. Where were they going to fall? Were they going to stay at the 4 seed? Would they have to play the Lakers in the first round? Would they slip a little bit and have to play the Clippers in the first round this year? So many intriguing matchups and storylines, and now we're deprived of that. I still think they have a chance to maybe win a first-round matchup, depending on who they play. Maybe if it's the Phoenix Suns, they have a chance. But this is a crushing blow to a team that legitimately had Western Conference Finals and potentially NBA final prospects on their horizon. That's how good and deep this team really is. And speaking of other teams that are vying for better seeding in the Western Conference and looking to make a run this season, the Dallas Mavericks, very interesting team. Had their owner, Mark Cuban, made some very interesting remarks about the NBA's play-in tournament, calling it an enormous mistake. Now, Luka Doncic was the first one to express his disapproval and his dislike for the play-in tournament. And so Mark Cuban was simply echoing those sentiments. But the play-in tournament, which obviously features the 7th through the 10th teams, seeded teams in the Western and Eastern Conference. The way it works, the 7th and the 8th seed play against each other. The winner is the 7th seed. The 9th and the 10th seeded teams play against each other. The loser is eliminated. And then the loser from the 7-8 matchup plays the winner of the 9 and 10 matchup for the 8th and final playoff spot. Now, Cuban acknowledged that he understands why the NBA is doing this. But where he differs is he's saying if you want to implement a more creative approach to kind of dealing with COVID-19 and the restrictions that it places and the additional games, then just rank the teams 1 through 20. Just list the teams 1 through 20, best records all the way down, have the bottom 4 teams play. And the big worry is because of this compressed schedule. They're concerned that there's fewer rest days. Your star players are having to play more back-to-backs, more frequently, more minutes just to make it into the tournament. Because if you're not a top 6 seed, then you're going to have to settle for the play-in tournament and at least have to play 1, if not 2 additional games. But let me first say this. I genuinely like Mark Cuban. I think he's one of the brightest minds that we have. I think he's one of the shrewdest business operators that we have. And I love how pro player he is. He's a very outspoken owner on social justice issues. He on player empowerment. He is all pro player. And he doesn't just pay lip service. He puts his money where his mouth is. He actually takes action. I respect the hell out of Mark Cuban. But Mark Cuban is being extremely hypocritical here. We know exactly why he's upset with this play-in tournament. And first of all, we know more importantly why he approved of it, because Mark Cuban is on the NBA Board of Governors. So they unanimously approved for this proposal to pass. He's happy that they passed this because it's more revenue, so it allows him to collect more revenue. But he's upset about it now that the Dallas Mavericks are a 7th seed and are going to have to play in the play-in tournament. The Mavericks were a 7th seed last year, got to avoid the play-in tournament last year, and now the Dallas Mavericks are the 7th seed again this year and it looks like they're going to play in the play-in tournament. And he has a gripe that when you compare the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference, the Dallas Mavericks at 29-24, ranked 7th in the Western Conference, have a better record than the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference, the Atlanta Hawks, with a 30-25 record. The Mavericks have a winning percentage of 54.7. The Hawks, at number 4 in the Eastern Conference, have a winning percentage of 54.5. That's where the ultimate gripe lies. Don't try and cloud and make this a much more convoluted thing, Mark Cuban. You know exactly why you're upset. You're just disappointed that your team isn't ranked and seeded exactly where you thought they'd be at this point in the season. That's all that it is. And so this is like if you have kids and your kids approach the parents and they request a violent video game like Call of Duty. The parents know fully well Call of Duty is a gruesome game. It can lead to negative impacts and have potentially detrimental effect on a child's brain development as they get older. They know fully well what this game encompasses. And then they get upset at the kid when all of a sudden they see that several months after he starts playing the game, he becomes more ill-tempered and angry. Well, you enabled the kid to buy the game. He asked you, can I buy this game? And you said yes. So you can't all of a sudden turn around and be upset because of the ramifications when you knew fully well what those could potentially be. And ultimately, this is the same reason why the NFL expanded their season to 17 games. More games equals more revenue, equals more intrigue, and ultimately gets more eyes glued onto the television. You attract more people to watch your product. You attract more people to watch the game. And ultimately, what happens is they're trying to kind of discourage some of these teams that aren't playing well from intentionally tanking and hoping to secure a higher lottery pick in the draft. So this was an incentive to a lot of these smaller market teams, a lot of these smaller market programs, not programs, but organizations that, hey, there's still things that are worth playing for. And those fan bases have additional games to cheer on their team, have additional reasons to be excited about their team. That's what this says. That's what this says. And so you look at the NBA hemorrhaged tons of money, just like every other major sports business and every major business in the world. The NBA lost about $1.5 billion in revenue last year because of COVID, because of the shutdown. So again, from a player's perspective, I understand why guys like Luka Doncic are coming out and saying, I don't really want to play these extra games. It's more taxing on my body. I'm expending more energy, more exhaustive. I understand why they feel that way. But Mark Cuban, don't do this now just because your team isn't seated where you want them to be seated at this point in the season. You voted on it. You voted on it. Morning, Joe, right here, J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Coming up in about 10 minutes, my special guest is going to be joining me on the show, Ryan Turell, Yeshiva basketball star. I cannot wait for that. But let's transition to the NFL. Some big news, some major players, and some major announcements. Julian Edelman, the longtime New England Patriots slot receiver, announced his retirement in just a beautifully done, epically done video in Gillette Stadium. Had a tremendous 12-year career, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP in Super Bowl 53 over the Rams. But this is one of my issues that I have with sports nowadays. This is what I take umbrage at, is how we're starting to remember and appreciate players' contributions to the game. This is my biggest issue, because the first question that we always ask is, okay, how should we measure the worth of this guy? Is this guy a Hall of Famer? And all the questions that were flooding into my inbox, that were flooding across all the social media platforms, across all the pundits and the talk show hosts was, is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer? Why are we asking whether or not Julian Edelman is a Hall of Famer 24 hours after the man retires? Why are we explicating whether or not he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, how he stacks up to the Torrey Holts, to the Wes Welkers, to the Reggie Waynes? Why are we always jumping to the conclusion and jumping to the comparisons? Can't we take a step back and merely appreciate what the guy did on and off the field first? And then a week removed, 2 weeks removed, I'm all for it. Let's dive in. Does he deserve? But the fact that we're already comparing him to Wes Welker 24 hours after the man retires, and we're trying to nitpick and find different holes in the argument that, yes, he should be, no, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. This guy was the ultimate competitor, the ultimate fighter. This guy was a 7th-round draft pick. Picked 27th overall in the 7th round, 232nd overall. This guy has overcome. He's persevered to get to this point. And I just sometimes think people forget that players can impact the game, can impact the sport, can make major contributions, not just on the field, but off the field. You think about Julian Edelman, he was always offering a helping hand. He was always proactive about his Jewish identity and embracing his Jewish identity. He was outspoken on social issues. And if you want to look at his on-the-field contributions, I don't know. He just has the second most receptions in the postseason history with 118. The only guy that has more is Jerry Rice, universally known as the best, for most people, as the best wide receiver to ever play the NFL. Julian Edelman is second for most postseason receptions. So he's got 6 games of at least 100 receiving yards in the postseason, tied for Michael Irvin for second most all time. Jerry Rice, of course, first on that list. And then you look at some of the iconic moments, and that's when we think back to Julian Edelman and some of these players, is what types of iconic moments did they provide? And there's a perfect example that you can think of with Super Bowl 53, or actually 51 rather, against the Atlanta Falcons. I don't always understand the Roman numerals. For Super Bowl 51, when the Patriots were down 28-3, and then they're down 28-20 on that last potential drive of the game, Julian Edelman caught that improbable catch. It was deflected off of 3 Atlanta Falcons defenders, and he caught it over 3 Atlanta Falcons defenders before it touched the ground. He has that iconic moment. He was the ultimate general. He was the ultimate warrior that Tom Brady wanted to go into battle with. One of my favorite players as a Lakers fan is Derek Fisher. And Julian Edelman and Derek Fisher are almost the same player to their stars. Because when you think about Tom Brady and Julian Edelman, every time he needed a clutch catch, anytime he needed a clutch 3rd down conversion, a 4th down conversion, he was always featured in those late game drives. He was never the star player, but always featured in those late game drives. Derek Fisher, same thing for Kobe Bryant. He was one of the clutchest basketball players in NBA history. Hit the 0.4 second shot in 2004 in Game 5 against the San Antonio Spurs. One of the most legendary and iconic shots in NBA history. He's hit multiple shots against the Orlando Magic in the 2009 finals to seal different games for Kobe. This was the guy that Kobe trusted with his life and his soul. And so that's who he felt most comfortable going into war with. And same thing with Julian Edelman with Tom Brady. Those two will be forever linked because of the success that they had together. So ultimately, he capped his career 2nd place all time in the Patriots for receptions, behind just Wes Welker. 4th on the team's career receiving yards list, 6,822 receiving yards, behind only Stanley Morgan, Rob Gronkowski, and Wes Welker. So, again, I hate that we always are in such a rush to jump at the chance to compare this guy and to argue and debate whether he's a Hall of Famer or not. Can't we just appreciate where he is right now? That's my opinion about the matter. And speaking of the team that they actually defeated along the way, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who are in a very precarious situation, very precarious spot right now, because they've got the 4th overall pick in this year's upcoming NFL draft. And they just announced 2 days ago that they will be going to watch Justin Fields' second pro day in Ohio, along with the 49ers and along with the New England Patriots. Now, I've said this before, that I believe the 49ers should draft Justin Fields with the 3rd overall pick. If the Jets don't take him at number 2, which they're not going to, they're going to draft Zach Wilson. I've always been a big believer and a big proponent of Justin Fields. I think they should do that. I'm not sure if they will, but that's what I've always believed. That the Falcons are a wild card team because they've got a quarterback in Matt Ryan who's 35, and he just threw for his 10th straight 4,000+ yard season. 10th straight 4,000+ yard season. In fact, he just finished 4th in the NFL for most passing yards last year. And yet, he is climbing up there in age. There's only 3 quarterbacks that are relevant, that are older than him: Big Ben, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady. Alex Smith is technically older than him, but he's not really playing. So you're looking at a guy who probably has about 2 or 3 more quality years in him. And when I think about Matt Ryan, and I think about the Atlanta Falcons and the different directions that they're going in, to me, the Atlanta Falcons, if Justin Fields slides down to 4 and you are able to draft him, I say you draft him and you don't look back. You start anew with Justin Fields. He's born in the state of Georgia. He'd be a great fit. And again, Matt Ryan, allow him to leave somewhere else, allow him to win somewhere else, and you just start anew, start afresh. You have a new head coach, Arthur Smith. Allow this new player to flourish a little bit. And the problem is that if Justin Fields is taken at number 3 by the San Francisco 49ers, and it is instead Trey Lance that is available at the number 4 spot, then I think you pass on Trey Lance just because I'm not 100% certain who he's going to be, and you do have Matt Ryan in your back pocket as a great plan B. He's a little bit unproven in Trey Lance. There's not much tape on him. In that situation, I say that you draft, or that you stick with Matt Ryan and pass up on Trey Lance, draft a defensive player, someone who's going to be more beneficial for your team. Because the reality is, when you look at the Atlanta Falcons, their biggest issue was the defense. Their defense was horrendous last year. Their offense didn't have any problems. Top 5 in offense statistically last year. Top 3 offense under Arthur Smith last year. So offense isn't going to be the issue. In fact, you hire Dean Pease to be your defensive coordinator, who's a 47-year veteran in the NFL. That's not going to be the issue. He's one of 8 defensive coordinators to have been on 2 Super Bowl winning coaching staffs with the Baltimore Ravens and the New England Patriots. So Dean Pease is going to be a great defensive coordinator for the Falcons. Again, you still have Dante Fowler Jr. You still have Grady Jarrett. Apologize. He's an all-pro player. So your defense is still intact. And the other thing is, Matt Ryan did just restructure his deal. So you're going to have a little bit more flexibility to perhaps trade for a player or sign some talented defensive players to clean that up. So that's what I would say if you're the Atlanta Falcons, if this is the situation that you're in. If Justin Fields becomes available at number 4, I say that you draft him. If he's taken at number 3 by the 49ers and it's Trey Lance or Mac Jones you're picking between, I say you keep Matt Ryan and live with the results. So that's what I think on the matter. Again, Morning Joe right here on Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube, Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Now, I told you about my guest that I was going to be bringing on today, and I'm about to introduce him. This is a really special interview for me growing up in Los Angeles. I'm really excited to bring on Ryan Turell in a moment. Played his high school basketball at Valley Torah High School, now has been a star at Yeshiva University, and he had offers to play at Division I, and he opted instead to play for Yeshiva University, where he's been the leading scorer for the Maccabees for 3 straight years, averaging 26 points last year, or this past season, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 77% shooting from the floor. In fact, the Maccabees, he's led them to 37 straight wins, the longest active streak in the NCAA currently. And he's trying to become the first Orthodox Jewish basketball player to play in the NBA. He's been garnering interest. And with that, it is my pleasure to bring on to the show Ryan Turell. First of all, good morning, Ryan. I appreciate you joining me. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Good morning. I'm doing well. And I'm glad to be here and excited to be here.
So let me first ask you, because you're in New York right now, so I have to imagine that it's 11:30. Have you already gone up your shots this morning?
It's actually I'm in Los Angeles right now. I'm
Okay.
here for a little bit. School's on Zoom, so got an early morning workout with my trainer Turell, and it was a quick lift, and now I'm here and excited.
And by the way, what do your workouts, what do those regiments typically consist of?
Well, it's different every time, but it's really to prepare me for the next level, and work on things specifically for me to get better and to get my body right to play at the next level and to play wherever I end up playing.
And by the way, so my family is Jewish. I went to Pressman Academy, Temple Beth Am, and so I'm living in my own apartment right now. But I understand that every Friday night for Shabbat, my family always invites me over for Shabbat. I understand, Ryan, how good those Friday night dinners are. You got the challah, you got the hummus. So you're playing a lot on Saturday nights. How do you make sure you don't go overboard and maintain kind of that Shabbat diet and not go too hard when you know you're going to be playing Saturday night?
Right. It is a funny thing on the team. Everyone discusses, hey, do we like Saturday night games more? Like, some guys hate them, some guys love them. I personally love them because you get the whole community out there. You don't just get the school, you get people from outside who don't usually have the time during the week to come see you guys play. But they get to see and they get to bring their families out Saturday nights. So I think our crowds are very alive and maybe the best they are on Saturday nights. But as far as diet goes, you just got to be careful to not eat too much cholent and try to eat cleaner.
And by the way, when I think about some of my favorite Jewish basketball players, obviously you have recent guys like the Amari Stoudemire's, the Jordan Farmar's, the Omri Caspi's, Jason Caponos, but there are a lot of older basketball players that grew up in the 60s. You have the Dolph Shays, you have the Rudy LaRussos of the world, the Art Haymans of the world. There are a lot of these guys that I know played before you and I were even born. But some of the more recent players, do you draw any inspiration from those guys? How much did you kind of look up to and admire those more recent Jewish basketball players that were playing in the NBA?
Well, for me, I grew up a Laker fan, so Jordan Farmar was, and he played at a high school right by my house. So watching him in the NBA was really cool. And a guy like Danny, who came from Israel and grew up in Israel is playing in the NBA right now. He's a rookie. I think he's inspiring a lot of kids out there, and I'm definitely inspired by him. And I want to hopefully keep the trend going.
Now, one of the consistent traits when I've spoken to a lot of people prior to bringing you on, when I read different articles and things of that nature, the consistent trait that was always highlighted was your work ethic and your diligence to hone your craft and to improve every facet of your game. And obviously you were privileged in that you were around basketball your entire life. Your dad played at UCSB. In fact, the Gauchos probably should have won the first round against Creighton in the NCAA tournament this year. It's a shame they didn't make that layup with like 3 seconds left, but it is what it is. And obviously you have a close relationship with Kiki Vandeweghe as well. So you've been around basketball your entire life. How much of your work ethic do you think stems from being around those individuals, and how instrumental was it that you got to grow up with those people right in your backyard?
Oh, it's everything, to be able to see these type of role models around me and see these people, work hard and whatever they do. My dad wakes up at 4:30 a.m. every day, and he just gets ready for work and then he goes to work. To see that, and in something that he does, and then I know Kiki is an extremely hard worker, and they both always told me, it's what you do when no one's watching. It's what you do when the lights are off. If you just show up to the game, not putting in extra work, not putting in that extra hour, not putting in those extra, shots up, you're not gonna you're not gonna be great on the floor. You're not gonna do what you want on the court. But if you, work hard and show up early and bust your butt every time you step on practice court, right? And every time you get out for an early morning workout, and every time you do that, you improve yourself. You get that much better, right? And if you just do the work and you put the work in when no one's watching, it's going to translate.
Now, typically, you don't always hear about Division I caliber basketball players playing Division III. It's normally the opposite way around. You normally see guys like Duncan Robinson with the Miami Heat or Derek White with the San Antonio Spurs, Division III players that had to prove themselves first to then make that leap to Division I. And you had an opportunity to go to Division I school. You had initially committed to Army, then you decided to decline that then decommit from there. And you even had an opportunity perhaps walk on at some bigger schools like Stanford. How thankful are you that you ultimately made the decision that you made to go to Yeshiva? And how much do you relish the opportunity to kind of be a beacon of hope for some of these future aspiring Jewish basketball players?
It's a dream come true. It's an absolute dream come true. When I was coming down to my decision, after I verbally committed to West Point, I sat back and really thought about my decision, and we contacted the rabbi up there, and he said, if you're going to be a religious Jew, it's going to be very tough for you to come to this school. You're going to have to shoot guns, and it's going to be hard to get kosher food and whatnot. But so I sat back and I told my dad, listen, I went to Jewish schools my whole life. I've kept kosher, I've kept Shabbos. What am I doing here? Why am I sacrificing my religion, my Judaism, who I am, for just to say I'm a Division I basketball player? And at the end of the day, we said, listen, if you perform and you win, they're gonna find you. Your talent, they're gonna find where you're at. You just have to do what you do. You just have to perform and win. And I don't regret the decision at all. I love Yeshiva, and the fact is that if I'm able to inspire just one kid out of it, to show them that there's a pathway. Kids like me who don't know what they're doing right now, who are Division I athletes, right? Could be Division I athletes. To be able to go to, I want to set the pathway to be able to go to Yeshiva and go and stick with your religion and still play basketball at a high level and get scouted by professional teams.
And for me, when it comes to discerning talent, right, evaluating players, For me, it doesn't really matter. It's pretty easy to tell, hey, is this guy talented or is this guy not talented? I don't really care what league you're in, what division you're in. For me, if you're averaging 26 points a game, 8 rebounds, 77% shooting from the floor, I don't really give a damn what league you're in or any of that nonsense. Because to me, in my eyes, you're a really good player. You have to be a damn good player to be averaging those stats. But obviously, I'm sure you get a lot of pushback. What do you say to people that maybe question or try to question and devalue your accomplishments, your success, simply on the basis that you play at Yeshiva University as opposed to a bigger brand or a more recognizable school? Does that ever bother you?
No, it inspires me. When people, aren't in your corner and people are doubting, it just makes me want to work harder and prove them wrong. Luckily I've had a really good support system around me and a lot of people, showing love and respect and on my side and believing in me. But it just inspires me to work harder and get in the gym and try to prove those guys wrong.
And when was the moment that you realized on your basketball journey that, hey, you know what, I can be a pretty special basketball player? Was there a moment? Was there, after you scored 36 against Manhattan this year, what was there a specific moment when you realized, hey, I can kind of be someone special as I'm embarking on this basketball journey of mine?
Well, at a young age, I always believed in myself, even when I wasn't the best player on the court, even when I was, wasn't the tallest, strongest. I was definitely one of the weaker players growing up, but for me personally, I just love the game so much, and I've always wanted to do it, and I've always wanted to, try to be the best at what I do. So, I just kept working at it and working at it and working at it, and to get this recognition is just an unbelievable and humbling feeling, and it just makes me want to work harder to try to achieve that goal.
And a lot of times when we see great basketball players or really good basketball players, they're typically a little bit undersized for their position when it comes to transferring to the NBA, right? You see a lot of college bigs that are 6'7", 6'8", and maybe in the NBA they're a little bit undersized to serve that center role. But you're a 6'7" combo guard. You shot the ball 43%, 42% from the three-point line last year. So you shoot the lights out, you rebound well, you assist well, you can create your own shot, you got good handling skills, and most importantly, you play elite level defense, which is an extremely important trait at the next level. How do you think your game would transfer to the next level if you were given that opportunity?
Listen, if I was given that opportunity, I'll do whatever the team needs. If the team needs me to knock down threes, I'll be that guy. If the team needs me to set screens and set a good pick, I'll be that guy. If it needs me to set up, whoever player, I'll be that guy. At the end of the day, it's about making your team better and knowing your role. And if I'm able to get that opportunity, I would be a guy who fills a role. And I'd be happy to do so.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I did find that really interesting, that you have a good understanding of what's needed, what's required, and what's important, right? Filling a role is so important. A lot of players, I heard you mention before, they don't really understand what that aspect of basketball means, kind of serving your role. How much did you learn from playing in some of those pickup games with Johnny Juzang and Alfonso McKinney and Kihei Clark and some of these talented players, Amari Bailey, some of these talented players here in the Los Angeles area, about just kind of filling your role and serving a specific need when you're out there on the floor?
Right. I mean, you learn a lot. You learn that, the most talented team doesn't usually win those games. It's the team that, everybody does their job. The rebounder gets rebounds. The three-point shooter hits those shots. The guy who can set people up sets people up. If the more talented team usually doesn't win, it's the team that does their role and the team that works harder. And if if everybody's doing a role, you can win championships, you can win games.
And was there a specific player growing up that you tried to emulate or tried to model your career after? And is there someone perhaps, or you kind of just looked at some of the older players growing up?
Right. Well, I like to soak in a lot as much as possible. Kobe growing up was my favorite player of all time. His work ethic and his Mamba mentality, his killer instinct, and his clutch gene, that was just very inspirational. But I like to pick and nitpick on, not nitpick, but like take out clips of different specific players. I'm like, oh, I want to get good at that. Oh, I want to get good at that. The way I see JJ Redick coming off a screen tight, always moving without the ball. Oh, I want to get good at that. The way Kobe's footwork, I want to get good at that. Watch this guy. Watch this guy. It watches the way he closes out and then recovers on defense. So I try to, pick from plays that I like and players that I like, and see how, or successful players, and see how they play in the league, and try to learn from that and emulate my game after that.
And you kind of mentioned a little bit with a guy like JJ Redick. Is there someone in the NBA currently that's playing that you think your game most resembles? Whether or not you wanted to emulate their game, when you look at the way that you play, is there a current NBA player that you think, hey, my game really resembles theirs?
That's a good question. I personally don't think so. Maybe if I got the role, something like Alex Caruso, or Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, something like that. But I'm my own person. I don't personally know what game I resemble, but to even get the looks and even get the comparisons is just an honor.
Well, Alex Caruso, you definitely have the height advantage over him. So I do think, and you've got the hair, probably most importantly. I think he'd be really jealous of that you're just rocking this long hair and he's on a Manscaped commercial. But I do love Alex Caruso. No shot at Alex Caruso.
Yeah,
so let me ask you, obviously your season got cut short a little bit prematurely. So you're in the offseason now. You didn't get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament this year because they canceled it. So what in this offseason are you trying to practice? You trying to work on the most to refine in your basketball repertoire?
Well, one, you can never be a good enough shooter. You see the best shooter in the world, Steph Curry, just getting shots up every day and getting better at his craft every day. So you can never be a good enough shooter. So definitely improve on that part of my game, and my ball handling and one-on-one skills. I definitely want to get better at that. Having being a tall guard, I definitely want to be able to handle the ball really well, and being able to play point guard at the next level. That's definitely a goal of mine. Shooting guard also, but I definitely need to tighten up my handles and be able to take guys.
And has your dream always been to play in the NBA since you were a child, or was it initially, hey, you know what, I'd like to play Division I basketball, or has it always been, what's always been your ultimate goal when it comes to basketball?
So it was always just get to the next level for me. When I was in middle school, it was like, okay, I just want to play varsity in 9th grade. And then when I got to high school, hey, I want to play Division I basketball, and then now I'm in college. It's, hey, if I could play professionally anywhere. And the fact that I got some looks is just humbling, and it was unbelievable to me, but it's inspiring me to work harder and try to achieve that goal.
And final two questions before I let you go. This is a current NBA question. If every team in the NBA is healthy, who are you taking to win the title this year?
I got to go with my Lakers, man. I got to go with my Lakers. You can't bet against LeBron. That guy is unbelievable. And, if everybody's healthy, if AD's healthy, and that team gels with the addition of Drummond and, all their role guys, I think they have the best shot.
And finally, Ryan, how can we follow you? How can people check out your highlights and do all of these things to continue to support you on this journey?
You can go on Max Live and look it up on maxlive.com. That's where all our games are. And shout out to Kiva Poppers who's done an amazing job running that and making highlights and running the whole broadcast. So that shout out to that man right there. We call him the Woj of YU, YU Woj, because he drops all the in backside the practice info and all the stuff behind closed doors. He drops that info, and so we call him the YU Woj.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it.
And I was just going to add too that one of your teammates, actually, or one of your former teammates, I don't even know if he's watching. I don't even know if he remembers me. I actually played against him. Simcha Halpert, I know, was one of your teammates. When he played at Shalhevet, I actually played against him at Pressman.
Really?
And at Pressman Academy. Now, I think he's going to be a little upset to know. I'm pretty sure we beat their team, but hey, no need to brag right here. We'll see how he responds. But
yeah, that's great.
Yes. But Ryan, thank you so much. I'm really not only impressed with your journey, but I think we all are really inspired by what you're doing. And your quest to become the first Orthodox Jewish basketball player in the NBA is not far-fetched at all. I know you're already garnering interest, and just congratulations and best of luck moving forward, man. It's great to catch up, and I really appreciate you joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time, and wish the best of luck to you.
All right. Ryan Turell, thank you so much. A pleasure to have him on. Really interesting to hear about his journey, and again, what kind of motivates, what inspires, and looking forward to seeing what the rest entails for him. All right. So coming up, by the way, some extra news out of the NFL very briefly. There are a couple teams that are starting to opt out of the voluntary off-season workouts, opting against it. And some of these teams include the Seattle Seahawks, the Denver Broncos, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And to me, I understand why they're opting out of this. This makes perfect sense. I understand why they're doing this. Why put themselves in additional risk? Why incur additional risks when you can continue to remain with your family, continue to stay with your family, not exposed, not potentially getting infected or infecting anyone else, and potentially kind of spreading and being a vector for this disease. So I understand why they're kind of thinking, hey, you know what? I don't really want to be doing this. Makes perfect sense to me. By the way, the UFC just came out with some news that a Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor trilogy, round 3, will be commencing in July, on July 10th in Las Vegas. So very excited for that. The second round was really fun to watch, and so it'll be fun to see these two teams go at it. Okay, final topic of the day: Malkin's moments. Favorite topic of the week. So Paul George scored 30-plus points for the 4th straight game after dropping 36 in a win over the Pacers, which is tied for the second longest active streak of his all-star career. And then the Cleveland Indians, their star ace pitcher, Shane Bieber, was fantastic last night, going 9 innings through 11 strikeouts. And listen, he delivered just a stellar performance. And the White Sox, I mean, he struck out now 35 players through his first 3 starts of the season for the second straight year. That's only been done. Nolan Ryan did it in 1973. Garrett Cole did it in 2018. So this is his 15th straight game of striking out at least 8 players. And of course, the Dodgers pitcher Trevor Bauer improved to 2-0, pitched 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, just 1 hit, 2 walks for the new Dodgers acquisition this offseason in a 7-0 shutout win over the Colorado Rockies. And then finally, the Detroit Tigers' Wilson Ramos hit not one, but two home runs last night in the Tigers' 8-2 win over the Houston Astros. So that's all the time that I got for you today. Thank you so much for joining me right here on Morning Joe every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.